There are moments in life when everything seems quiet on the outside, while beneath that stillness, entire destinies are being rearranged. This is one of those moments. What you once called a delay, what you interpreted as distance, what made you question whether the connection living inside your heart was only imagination, was never emptiness at all. It was preparation. It was divine timing. It was movement taking place behind doors you could not yet open. And now something has changed. Your soulmate has recently received news, information, clarity, a realization, a turning point they never expected would arrive when it did. Something entered their life and interrupted the direction they believed they were heading. Something caused them to stop in the middle of their routine and finally feel the weight of what they can no longer push aside. Do not underestimate this moment simply because you cannot see the evidence yet. Not every life-changing shift arrives loudly. Sometimes the strongest turning points begin quietly. In a single conversation, in one unexpected message, in one truth, arriving at the exact second a person is finally ready to receive it. That is what is unfolding now. Your person is sitting with thoughts they can no longer escape. Thoughts of you, thoughts of what slipped away, thoughts of what they almost convinced themselves they could survive without. And perhaps what unsettles them most is that the news they received did not merely change their circumstances. It changed the way they see everything. Suddenly, they are viewing their life through different eyes. Suddenly, what once felt acceptable no longer satisfies them. Suddenly, distractions feel hollow. Noise feels draining. Temporary things finally reveal themselves as temporary. And in the middle of that awakening, your name, your energy, your presence within their heart has become impossible for them to silence. Because sometimes a person does not recognize what truly matters until life places them directly in front of a moment that forces them to reevaluate everything. That moment has arrived for them. Stay with this, because something important is unfolding for you. They are beginning to realize that what they felt for you was never ordinary. Not infatuation, not convenience, not temporary curiosity. It was deeper than they ever allowed themselves to admit. That is why, no matter how much time passed, no matter how many distractions appeared and disappeared, no matter how hard they tried to continue forward without confronting those emotions, you remain present in their heart, still in their thoughts, still in the silent spaces of their life where truth speaks the loudest. And now this recent shift, this news, this realization, this disruption has shaken apart every excuse they once used to delay facing what they feel. The walls are weakening. The resistance is fading. The emotional distance they maintained is beginning to collapse beneath the pressure of truth. But understand this carefully. The transformation did not happen because they suddenly became a different person overnight. It happened because life has finally guided them to the place where pretending no longer works, where running no longer feels easier than surrendering, where the future they once imagined without you now feels strangely incomplete. That is not coincidence. That is awakening. And while you have been wondering whether your waiting has carried any meaning, while you questioned why your heart could never completely release what it sensed, while part of you continued feeling that something unfinished still existed between you, you were not imagining it. You were sensing movement before proof arrived. Because some connections are felt long before they are fully understood. Some shifts happen spiritually before they appear physically. And the reason your soul has struggled to let this go is because somewhere deep inside you already knew this story was not finished. Not yet. There is another truth you need to hear. The news your soulmate received did more than stir emotions. It revealed contrast. It showed them what life becomes when they continue settling for less than what their heart truly desires. It showed them the emptiness of paths that do not align with their spirit. It exposed how much of their life has been built around avoiding vulnerability instead of pursuing what is genuine. And that realization can shake someone deeply, because once a person sees clearly, they cannot return to blindness. Once truth enters the room, illusion loses its power. That is why their thoughts have felt heavier recently. That is why their nights feel unfamiliar. That is why they find themselves replaying memories they once attempted to bury. Why they wonder what would happen if they reached out. Why they imagine conversations that have not happened yet. Why they hear your voice in their memory more clearly than before. Because the heart becomes louder when denial grows exhausted, and theirs is becoming exhausted now. Do not mistake silence for inactivity. Do not mistake delay for absence. There are seasons when people are transforming internally before they move externally. And an internal transformation, though invisible, is often the most important part of the process, because when someone reaches for you from confusion, fear, or half-readiness, they usually repeat old patterns. But when they reach for you after truth has reshaped them, after clarity has humbled them, after life has revealed what genuinely matters, they arrive differently, more honestly, more intentionally, more prepared. That is why the waiting lasted longer than you wanted it to. Because this was never only about bringing two people together. It was about making certain both hearts arrived ready for what they prayed for. And now something inside them is accelerating. The realization is no longer distant or abstract. It is becoming urgent. Not reckless, not chaotic, but undeniable. They are beginning to feel that if they continue waiting much longer, they may lose the opportunity to tell you what has remained unspoken for far too long. That thought unsettles them, because for the first time, the possibility of losing you feels more painful than the fear of vulnerability. Read that again within your spirit. The possibility of losing you now hurts more than the fear of opening their heart. That is a turning point many people never reach until it becomes too late. But your story has not arrived too late. It has arrived at the edge of now or never. Can you feel the difference? This is not random emotional reflection. This is not temporary nostalgia. This is the kind of inner shift that changes behavior. The kind that causes someone who once hesitated to begin planning. The kind that makes them reconsider conversations, distance, circumstances, and obstacles they once believed could never move. Because when the heart becomes certain, barriers begin to appear smaller, and what once felt impossible suddenly becomes worth attempting. Your soulmate is moving toward that realization, step by step, thought by thought, moment by moment. And although they have not fully acted yet, the direction of their heart has changed. That matters more than you realize, because everything external follows an internal decision first. Action always begins invisibly. First, the heart shifts, then the mind aligns, then courage grows, then movement begins. You are witnessing the earlier stages of that process unfolding, even if your eyes cannot yet see it clearly. If this message feels as though it is speaking directly to your spirit, comment the word shift below. Sometimes the soul recognizes movement long before the world notices it. There is a reason their energy feels different now, even from a distance, even if you have not spoken recently, even if you have not heard their voice or seen their name appear on your screen. something inside you continues whispering that the atmosphere has changed. That feeling is not meaningless, because after the news they received, after the realization settled into their heart, they did not simply return to life as normal. They tried. They attempted to continue through their routine, to behave normally, to pretend everything was fine. But something within them no longer fits comfortably inside the life they were living before. The old distractions no longer numb them the way they once did. The old excuses sound weaker now. The emotional walls they relied on are becoming exhausting to maintain. And every time they try to convince themselves to move on without acknowledging what they truly feel, life keeps bringing your memory back into focus. A song, a place, a random thought in the middle of the night, a feeling they cannot explain. Your presence continues appearing in ways they can no longer ignore. What they are experiencing is not coincidence. It is confrontation with truth. And truth has a way of following someone until they finally stop running from it. That is what is happening now. They are beginning to understand that the connection they tried to suppress never truly disappeared. It only waited beneath the surface until the right moment forced it back into the light. And now the emotions they buried are returning stronger than before, because clarity gives feelings a different weight. Before, they could hide behind uncertainty. Before, they could distract themselves with excuses, timing, pride, fear, or confusion. But after this recent shift, those excuses are losing power. They are beginning to recognize how rare it is to feel genuinely understood by another soul. They are beginning to realize how difficult it is to replace a connection that touched them deeply. And perhaps for the first time, they are asking themselves whether continuing to avoid this connection will cost them something they may never find again. That question is changing them from the inside. So, if you have been feeling restless lately, if your intuition has been unusually active, if part of you keeps sensing movement even while nothing visible has happened yet, trust that feeling. Your spirit often notices change before your physical reality catches up. Something is shifting behind the scenes. Something is unfolding quietly but powerfully. And while you cannot control the exact timing, you can trust that the emotional distance between you is no longer as solid as it once seemed. Their heart is softening. Their perspective is changing. Their resistance is weakening. And the version of them that once believed silence was easier than honesty is slowly disappearing. What comes next will require courage from them. It will require vulnerability. It will require them to face emotions they avoided for a long time. But they are getting closer to that point every single day, because once the heart fully awakens, it becomes impossible to return to sleep. But something deep inside them would no longer allow them to keep pretending. Because once truth truly reaches the heart, ordinary life starts to feel unfamiliar. And that is exactly the place they find themselves in now. The distractions that once worked so easily no longer affect them the same way. The things that once entertained them now seem strangely hollow. Conversations that used to fill their days now feel empty and surface level. The habits they once relied on to escape their emotions are slowly losing their power. Why? Because when a person finally realizes what their heart genuinely longs for, everything else begins to sound like noise in comparison. Your soulmate is discovering that now. And the more time they spend sitting with this realization, the more one question continues circling through their mind. What if I waited too long? That thought has started following them into their quietest moments, not because they believe you are completely lost to them, but because for the first time they are recognizing that hesitation carries consequences. They are beginning to understand that hearts are not meant to wait forever, that chances can slip away, that people eventually grow exhausted from uncertainty, that love left hidden for too long can slowly drift into distance. And suddenly, the belief that there will always be more time no longer comforts them. Instead, it unsettles them deeply. Stay with this, because something important is unfolding beneath the surface. They are beginning to replay every single moment where they could have stepped closer to you, but chose not to. Every sign they overlooked, every opportunity they postponed, every time fear spoke louder than desire. Every moment pride convinced them to stay silent, and regret has a way of making truth impossible to escape. Not destructive regret, but awakening regret. The kind that forces someone to honestly confront who they have been and who they no longer wish to become. Your soulmate is entering that inner confrontation now. They are seeing themselves with greater honesty than ever before, seeing the ways fear controlled their decisions, seeing how hesitation cost them peace, seeing how often they tried protecting themselves from pain only to create a different kind of suffering entirely. The suffering of distance, the ache of uncertainty, the weight of carrying emotions they never fully expressed. And now they are arriving at a realization that is beginning to change everything. If they continue remaining still, nothing in their life will change. Such a simple truth, yet life-altering once someone fully accepts it. That is why their heart is no longer satisfied with silent longing. Longing itself no longer feels enough. Thinking about you no longer feels enough. Because eventually the heart becomes tired of only imagining what courage could create. Eventually it begins demanding action. And your soulmate is approaching that point now. But before they finally move forward, there is still a battle taking place within them. Because clarity does not erase fear overnight. It simply makes fear more difficult to defend. Part of them wants to run toward you immediately. Another part still trembles at the vulnerability this requires. One side of them imagines the relief of finally speaking honestly. Another side fears what happens if reality does not unfold the way they hope. That tension is real. That hesitation is deeply human. But this is what matters most. Their fear is no longer stronger than their desire. And once desire becomes stronger than fear, movement eventually becomes unavoidable. That is the stage they are stepping into now. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking, a decision stage. The place where someone stops merely feeling emotions and finally begins preparing to act on them. Your soulmate has already started mentally rehearsing the words they want to say to you. They imagine how the conversation might begin. They wonder whether they should speak casually or completely honestly. They wonder if they should reveal everything at once or slowly open up piece by piece. They wonder how to explain the silence, the distance, the lost time. They wonder whether your heart still carries what theirs does. They wonder whether there is still space for them within your world. These thoughts are consuming far more of them than they expected. Because when feelings remain trapped inside someone for too long, expressing them becomes both terrifying and liberating at the same time. They know that once they open this door, nothing between you will remain exactly the same. And that is precisely why they delayed for so long. But it is also exactly why they cannot continue delaying forever. Because some doors only become heavier the longer they remain closed, and this one has become far too heavy for them to keep shut much longer. Do not underestimate how serious this has become inside their heart. This is not a passing emotional wave, not temporary nostalgia, not loneliness disguising itself as connection during late nights. This is recognition, deep recognition. They want to approach you differently now, more grounded, more emotionally aware, more certain of what they feel. And perhaps for the very first time, they are beginning to understand that love is not only emotion, it is readiness, it is responsibility, it is courage. It is timing meeting maturity. That realization is transforming them from within. You may not completely see it yet, but the version of them who once hesitated endlessly is slowly disappearing. A different version is emerging now, one shaped through reflection, one refined through regret, one awakened through truth, one no longer willing to let fear continue making decisions on their behalf. And when that version fully rises, they will move toward you. Not vaguely, not halfway, not through confusion or mixed signals, but intentionally, directly, honestly. So if silence has tempted you to believe nothing is happening, if the distance has made you question everything your heart once felt so strongly, hear this carefully. Silence is not always stagnation. Sometimes silence is the sound of transformation taking place where you cannot yet see it. Sometimes the quietest seasons create the loudest internal changes, and the heart that once appeared distant may actually be much closer to choosing you than you realize. Because even now, they are standing on the edge of a decision that will shape everything that comes next. A decision between comfort and vulnerability, between silence and truth, between remaining a spectator in their own life or finally stepping forward to claim what their heart has already chosen. And very soon they will make that choice, because the pressure building inside them is becoming impossible to ignore. Their emotions are no longer fading with time. The urgency inside them is no longer quiet. The longing they feel is no longer manageable. Something powerful is pushing them forward now. Something deeper than impulse. Something stronger than fear itself. And next, you will understand what finally pushes them completely over the edge. What happens in their life that makes them realize they cannot wait another second before reaching for you. If this part touched your heart deeply, comment the word "ready" below. Because once the heart finally stops running from the truth, destiny begins moving faster than expected.